enjoying this Hump Day Wednesday, and hopefully you enjoyed the football game today between the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, that was going on while many were still probably at work. Of course, it was pushed back a lot from it was pushed back from last Thursday. So due to the coronavirus and the lack of numbers for the Ravens players, they played hard. They came out and gave it a good effort, but in the end, the Steelers just had too much for them and they won the game. But going away from that, watching this past Sunday's games, you saw some great performances. Two great performances stood out to me. Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans, he ran for 178 yards on 27 carries in a 45-26 win versus the Indianapolis Colts. Same day, in the later game, Tyreek Hill of the Kansas City Chiefs, 13 receptions, 269 yards, 3 TDs. Yes, that was a wide receiver with 269 yards receiving and 3 TDs. He had a heck of a game. And you probably, Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary is probably having nightmares thinking about the damage he did to them. What's going on, Pablo? For those that don't know, I'm actually on the Haps TV app, where you can actually come here and stream live, and it goes to your Facebook, your Twitter, and go to your YouTube. Just a great place to be with a lot of great journalists. You've got Daniel Artest covers NBA. You got Brian Waters that covers talks about the Ravens and wrestling. You got Ashley Baker does NFL and NBA talk. You got Danny Thompson that does Charlotte Hornets talk. Hey, a lot of great people here. So if you haven't already, go ahead and download the Haps TV app and subscribe to all the people I just told you. That's Ashley Baker, Danny Thompson, Daniel Artest, and Brian Waters. Got it? Good. Back to my point. All right. Now, watching these two athletes having great performances this past Sunday got me thinking. 200 yards is a high number for a wide receiver or a running back to get. So, which one is tougher? Now, many may think that a running back may have it tougher. Some may think a receiver may have it tougher. Here's a few things for you to kind of think on and kind of digest right now. I went and looked in the 2019 season and the 2020 season for people for running backs to go over 200 yards and wide receivers that went over 200 yards. Probably might be a little surprising for people. In 2019, you had 3 running backs go over 200 yards rushing in a game. Derrick Henry versus the Houston Texans, 32 carries, 211 yards, 3 TDs. You had Leonard Fournette go for 29 carries, 225 yards. Didn't score a touchdown, which is amazing for that many yards. But anyway, and then you have Raheem Mostert of the San Francisco 49ers, which is in the playoffs against the Green Bay Packers. 220 yards, 4 TDs. That's 219. That's 3 people in 2019, the 2019 season that went over 200 yards. Three running backs. 2019 for wide receivers, you had Will Fuller of the Houston Texans, 14 receptions, 217 yards, 3 TDs. You had Cooper Kupp for the Los Angeles Rams, 7 receptions, 220 yards, and a TD. That's it. So you had more running backs in 2019 go for over 200 yards than actually wide receivers, which I bet a lot of people didn't know. Then we've got this year. We've got Derrick Henry again, and it's again against the Houston Texans. 212 yards in 22 carries. He got 212 yards and 2 TDs. And also you have Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings, 206 yards in 22 carries and 2 touchdowns. Conversely, we have wide receivers, Tyler Lockett, Seattle Seahawks, 15 receptions, 200 yards, 3 TDs versus the Cardinals. Then you have Tyreek Hill, which is this past Sunday. 13 receptions, 269 yards, 3 TDs. So without this one this Sunday, there will be more running backs have 200-yard games than actual wide receivers. So it makes you think, is it actually tougher for wide receivers to get it, or is it running backs? With running backs, of course, they get the ball put in their hands, and of course, they're starting in the backfield behind the line of scrimmage, which is a disadvantage when it comes to, getting to the line of scrimmage because there could be penetration from the defensive line, there could be blitzes, all those type of things. But, if they're able to beat that, of course, they're able to make some things happen. But also, the ball has to travel less to get in their hands. That's the thing to think about. With Derrick Henry and the offense that he's in and Dalvin Cook, they are both the focal points of the offense. With that offense, they're going to get 20 to 25 carries a game. And their offensive line is built to run the football. So therefore, with the game plan and the way things are set up, they're going to get the ball more. I will say this. If you look around the NFL, it's more of a passing league. So you will not see as many running backs going for over 100 yards. However, the teams that do focus on running the football, they have a lot of that their running backs have a lot of 100-yard games. And amazingly, look at the teams this year. The Vikings and the Titans, both of those are run focused offense, and they both are the running backs that went over 200 yards. There you go. And of course, 2019, the 49ers and the Titans were both run oriented teams. That's what you have. Okay. Conversely, you have wide receivers. Of course, with the rules in today's NFL, you can't really grab, hold. They're going to call every single thing. You can't really, go and take out a wide receiver if they're coming across the middle. You can't do those type of things anymore. With those type of advantages, of course, wide receivers are going to have a little bit or have an easier time getting off the ball, do those type of things. Okay, they're going to have those different advantages there. So and also another thing as well, you rarely see offensive pass interference called against a wide receiver. You rarely do. You just don't. You don't see it called very much. So that's another advantage there as well for wide receivers. One thing I will say though is that there are so many different wide receivers that can step on the field. And I noticed in just doing a little bit of research that the ball gets spread around a lot to wide receivers. So unless you're the only, should say, competent wide receiver on the team, it's going to be tough for you to get 100 yards, or excuse me, 200 yards receiving in a game, unless they're just not, they're not going to shift. I think eventually they'd shift coverage to you to where they take you away. And I will say this the game this weekend, the Tampa Bay versus Kansas City game, I'm still trying to figure out what coverage Tampa Bay was playing because they didn't have a safety over the top of Tyreek Hill at all. He's their most dangerous weapon. Him and Kelsey are their most dangerous weapons. They didn't have a safety over the top at all, and they were guarding them man to man, hugging them at the line of scrimmage. I don't know what game plan Ty Bowles was thinking about, but his safety was nowhere in the sight when they were throwing those deep passes. Every single time, the safety is out of the picture. Those type of things aren't going to happen all the time. Those type of coverages aren't going to be there all the time. And there's plenty of wide receivers on the field that are going to catch passes. If you look at the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball around to plenty of different guys. You'll see Davante Adams get his catches, and he's going to make some things happen because he's a stud wide receiver in the NFL. But he's not going to just thoroughly dominate a game to 200 plus yards because there's going to be more people get open, and plus coverage is going to shift his way. So in that instance, wide receivers have it pretty tough too. So in doing my research and my looking up a few different things on wide receivers and defensive backs and running backs, I've kind of deducted that it's pretty even. It's actually pretty even. It's more even than what people want to think it is. That's just what it is. I mean, look at it. When you have a run based offense that has a run based offensive line, that running back eats. Ask Derrick Henry, ask Dalvin Cook. They're eating right now. If you look at the wide receivers, look at the wide receivers and look at you know they're eating right now too, of course, because it's a passing league and you can't really touch the quarterback and all those type of things as well. However, there's plenty of them out there. Just like there's running backs that people talk about, hey, you can get this running back and you can do this and do that. You still have to, wide receiver, you can do the same thing. It said, I got a question. Somebody said, Strider 03012931. That's his name. I'm sorry. And for those that don't know, I'm on the HAPS app, HAP TV app. Download the app, subscribe. You'll love it. Trust me. A lot of good journalists there. He says, rushing, it hurts the body. Yeah, rushing, it hurts the body, but is it harder though? It does hurt the body, but the wide receivers don't just necessarily just don't take any shots either. I got another one that says rushing is tougher. It's tough. Rushing is tough, but can you say it's tougher than fighting your own teammates for catches? I mean, give you another example. Chase Claypool. Remember one game he had this year, he was dominating. He was getting the ball every single game. I mean, he looked like he could have been in the Rookie of the Year contest for the Steelers, and he still is in it. However, if you notice since then, he hasn't gotten as many catches, and he's gotten more attention from defenses. So, is it really that easy? Is it really that easy? Got another that said rushing 100%. I get you there, but did you hear my thoughts on the wide receivers and why it would be different and hard? I'm sorry. Official Mike Scott said that. Official Mike Scott, did you hear those thoughts on the wide receiver? You also got to remember they can shift coverage over the top of a wide receiver. There's other wide receivers that actually catch the football too. You notice too that a lot of these running backs that have the opportunity to get 200 yards, they're a bell cow running back. They're not splitting a bunch of time with a bunch of people. There's can be what 2, 3, 4, 5 wide receivers on the field that can have potential to catch a football. Running back, there's only really one, maybe two of those at one time on the field. You may think I'm crazy, but it's pretty even, to be honest. I mean, you may think somewhat wide receivers may have it harder because they have to fight for more footballs from the quarterback and actually get open. They have to fight against double coverage. Sure, against a running team, some teams may load the box, but still, the Titans see that all the time. The teams load the box against them all the time. Does that phase Derrick Henry? No. He still gets 200. He still gets a bunch of yards. He still is the NFL's leading rusher. So, the myth that it's harder for rushers to or running backs to get to 200 yards than it is for anyone else, it's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true. I can say this. It's like I just pointed out. If you didn't hear what I said earlier, I said went over a few different stats. 2019, Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry, and Raheem Mostert all went for over 200 yards rushing. In 200, in same year, Will Fuller and Cooper Kupp were the only two wide receivers to go for over 200 yards receiving. 2020, Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook are the only two to go over 200 yards. 2020 for wide receivers, Tyler Lockett, and just recently Tyreek Hill. So if that doesn't happen Sunday, you have more running backs have over 200 yards than wide receivers again. So what does that tell you? That may tell you that it's not quite as easy as you think. It's easy for more wide receivers probably to get over 100 yards. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 200 yards. We're talking two bills, and more over the last more over the last 2 years have ran the ball for over 200 yards than wide receivers. I got the stats to prove it. So it's not quite as easy as you might think, easy an answer as you might think. No, rushing might not actually be as hard as receiving. And I'll give you those points again. They have to fight other receivers for the football. Remember, it's 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 5 wide receivers on the field. Remember that. Also, you have coverage over the top. So if they start getting off in a game, they're going to shift coverage that wide receiver's way. Also, I mean, you got to also think just think of the different things that a wide receiver is going to have to fight a lot of different things, like his own teammates and coverage too. I don't think a running back's going to have to fight his own teammates. He's going to have to fight the coach maybe if the coach takes him out the game. But other than that, he's not going to have to fight his other teammate for carries. No, Derrick Henry is going to get his carries. He's had a few games where he maybe didn't, but that's just because the game dictated that way, that he didn't get his carries and the Titans had to throw the football. But other than that, he's going to get his 20 to 25 cracks at it. And I'm betting on him to get 150 to 200 yards. He's done that a lot over his last couple years. And I mean, the numbers will tell you. And you look at the carries. I'm looking at the carries here. You had 32 carries for Derrick Henry one time. You had 29 carries for Leonard Fournette, and you had 29 for Mostert. So they got their carries. And the next, let's see, you had 22 carries for Derrick Henry and 23 carries 22 carries for Dalvin Cook. And also, I didn't even include that Ronald Jones from the Tampa Bay Bucks actually was 8 yards away from being the third 200-yard rusher. He had 192 yards versus Carolina this year. So somebody please tell me I'm wrong. But I think it's easier for running backs to get 200 yards than wide receivers. Yeah, it's equally tough, but I'm not saying 100 yards. I'm saying 200 yards. 200 yards, I've made my case. It's harder for wide receivers to get it than it is running backs. Somebody tell me I'm wrong. I'll gladly bring out the stats for you. So I've just laid them all out there for you. But hey, I'm Mike Patton. You can find me on Twitter at Mike Patton82. If you want to talk Titans with me, I do cover the Tennessee Titans. For the 3-point conversion, I do have a new article getting ready to come out anytime now, talking about the Cleveland Browns and the Tennessee Titans game and what challenges the Titans defense has coming up this game. You can find me at that work on the 3-point conversion. That's the number 3-point conversion.com. A lot of great writing going on there, a lot of great people as well. Again, you can find me on Twitter at Mike Patton82. You can also find me on this app, the Haps app. If you would go ahead and subscribe, hey, be a sponsor for me. I'd appreciate it. All right. Thank you for your time, everybody. I will be back this weekend previewing the Tennessee Titans as they host the Cleveland Browns. 2 8-3 teams. It ought to be fun. You have a good night.